You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like engineering, right? You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it and says, well, there it is.
Yeah, they literally just point to the screen.
Right. And you put a cast on it and it heals. It is visible. It is neatly categorized. And frankly, I mean, it's comforting.
It's completely binary. Like, the bone is broken or it isn't. The solution is clear.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of human psychology, and suddenly that x-ray machine is, well, it's totally useless. We are looking at a landscape that is completely murky, where the lines between sanity and madness or, safety and danger are entirely invisible. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are talking directly to you, our ultimate learner. And we know exactly why you're here. You don't just want to be entertained with a few spooky stories.
No, you want the real mechanics behind them.
Right. You want a shortcut to being well-informed about human nature, and today, you want to be thrilled.
We actually have a rather ambitious mission for this deep dive. We are synthesizing a massive stack of 15 top-tier psychological thrillers. But we aren't just going to recount the plots. That would be boring. We are going to explore the underlying psychological mechanics of the genre itself. We're looking at how these authors use cognitive vulnerabilities to turn the book into a predator, and you, the reader, into the prey.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we're talking about vulnerabilities, we really have to start with the most intimate trap possible, and that is our own minds. Because if we cannot trust our own memories or our own perception of reality, how can we trust anything else?
I mean, it is the ultimate terrifying premise. When your consciousness is compromised, the concept of a safe harbor just disappears entirely. You literally become an unreliable narrator in your own life.
Yeah, S.J. Watson's Before I Go to Sleep does this brilliantly. So we have Christine Lucas. She is 47 years old, and she suffers from a very specific, very severe type of amnesia. Every single time she goes to sleep, her mind is wiped completely clean.
Just a total reset.
Right. She wakes up forgetting her husband, her son, literally all her adult responsibilities. So she has to rely on a journal and a doctor to piece her existence together every single morning. But then, and here is the kicker, she begins to suspect that the very people helping her reconstruct her life are actually gaslighting her.
What Watson is doing there is so clever. He's weaponizing the biological process of memory consolidation. Physiologically, our brains take short-term experiences and encode them into long-term storage in the hippocampus.
Okay.
When that bridge is destroyed, which happens in Christine's case of anterograde amnesia, you don't just lose information. You lose your defense mechanisms entirely. You become completely malleable to whoever happens to be writing your history. The thriller mechanic here isn't, a monster in the closet.
Right, it's not a ghost.
Exactly. It's the realization that whoever controls your memory controls your actual identity.
Which is terrifying. But let me push back just a bit, because in Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, we see a different kind of neurological glitch that didn't seem quite as world-shattering, well, first glance. We follow Adam and Amelia. They are a couple hitting a rough patch, and they take a trip to Scotland to reconnect. But Adam suffers from face blindness. He literally cannot recognize his own family's faces. Honestly, as a thriller mechanic, doesn't that just sound like a severe social inconvenience rather than, a horror story?
I could definitely see why you'd think that.
Yeah.
But let's look at the clinical reality of prosopagnosia, which is face blindness. The brain's visual cortex can see the individual parts.
Yeah.
Like a nose, two eyes, a mouth.
Yeah.
But the mechanism that stitches those parts together and attaches emotional recognition to them is completely broken.
Wow, so it's just parts.
Yeah. Imagine looking at your spouse of 10 years, and your brain processes their face with the exact same emotional neutrality as looking at a coffee mug, or just a stranger on the subway. Feeney uses this to create this profound isolation. Adam is trapped in a world where literally everyone is a stranger.
Oh, that makes sense.
The suspense builds, because if you can't visually verify who is standing in front of you, a threat can just walk right through your front door and you'd smile and offer them a cup of tea.
Okay, when you put it like that, the cognitive dissonance is actually horrifying. If human identity is just a biological hard drive, what happens when the files get corrupted? In Before I Go to Sleep, it's like waking up with a factory reset brain every single day. The hardware is fine, but the data is just wiped.
Right, the data is gone.
But then you have a book like Keigo Higashino's Naoko, where it's like someone uploaded the wrong operating system entirely.
What's fascinating here is how Higashino bends the rules into something, well, supernatural adjacent to explore the exact same theme. In Nyoko, a man loses his wife in a terrible bus accident. His young daughter survives, but when she wakes up in the hospital, she possesses the memories, the consciousness, and the identity of her dead mother.
Oh, wow. So she knows intimate details only the mother could possibly know. It completely bends the concepts of gender, of marital love, and of sacrifice.
Exactly. And whether the condition is clinical, like amnesia and face blindness, or metaphysical, like the mind swap in Nyoko, the mechanical effect on you as the reader is identical. The authors are stripping away the character's internal reality. It forces the reader to confront a profoundly unsettling question.
Which is?
What actually makes you you? If we subtract your memories and we subtract your ability to recognize your loved ones, what is left of the human soul?
It is deeply unsettling, because if your internal reality is fractured, your immediate instinct is to look externally, right? You retreat to your physical home, you look to your family for a baseline of reality. But in this next batch of thrillers, that domestic sphere, the very place we all retreat to for comfort, becomes a literal or psychological prison.
Yeah, the authors take the cultural expectation of a safe space and just completely invert it.
We see the literal version of this in Stephen King's Misery. Paul Sheldon, who's a best-selling novelist, gets into a horrific car accident in a blizzard and wakes up in a secluded fame house. He's been rescued by Annie Wilkes, his self-proclaimed #1 fan.
And that rescue goes south very
I
quickly.
know, immediately. When she discovers he is killing off her favorite character in his new manuscript, the rescue turns into a brutal hostage situation. She forces him to rewrite his novel under the threat of torture, and we see a very similar physical captivity in Romy Hoskins' Dear Child. A woman named Lena and her 2 children are kept in a windowless shack in the woods by a militant, controlling father, Matthias, who dictates their every meal, their every bathroom break.
In both of those cases, the mechanism of fear is absolute physical powerlessness. The walls of the house are the absolute boundary of their universe. The tension comes from the physical logistics of survival and, hopefully, escape.
But here's where it gets really interesting. We usually think of captivity as being tied to a bed like in Misery, or locked behind a steel door in a shack in Dear Child. But Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca and Gillian Flynn's Sharp Objects show us that you can be held hostage just as easily by a memory, a house, or a toxic mother. You don't need a single lock or chain.
That distinction right there between physical and psychological shackles is where the genre really elevates.
Right. In Rebecca, the nameless second Mrs. De Winter arrives at the massive, beautiful Manderley estate. She isn't locked in her bedroom. She has full run in the house. But she is completely, suffocatingly dominated by the looming memory of her husband's dead first wife, Rebecca. The housekeeper, the decor, the very air in the house gaslights her into believing she's an inadequate imposter.
It's all atmospheric captivity.
Totally. And in Sharp Objects, reporter Camille Preaker leaves a psychiatric hospital and returns to her Missouri hometown to investigate violent crimes. She stays in her family's opulent Victorian mansion with her neurotic mother and a strange half-sister she barely knows. Camille isn't physically trapped either. She could drive away at any time, but she is absolutely unraveling under the weight of her family's toxic dynamics.
The mechanism at play in Rebecca and Sharp Objects is the violation of sanctuary. We are conditioned from childhood to believe that home is where the monsters can't get you. By turning the mother or the memory of an ex-spouse into the monster, the author removes the character's last refuge.
Which is terrifying because it's so relatable.
Exactly. It demonstrates how incredibly ordinary, mundane catalysts, like a passive-aggressive conversation at the dinner table or just living in your childhood bedroom, can lead to extraordinary psychological derangement. The reader feels the tension because everyone has experienced a difficult family dynamic at some point. The authors just turn the dial up to 100.
So, we've explored the terror of a broken mind and the nightmare of a toxic home. But there's a different kind of horror that these authors play with. Sometimes the terror isn't about being a victim held captive by someone else. Sometimes the dread comes from the realization that you are an active participant in the darkness.
Right, we're talking about complicity, the slow, gradual erosion of a moral boundary.
Let's look at Oyinkan Braithwaite's My Sister, the Serial Killer. We are in Lagos, Nigeria. Khalid is a pragmatic, responsible nurse. She has a beautiful, charming sister named Ayula. The only problem is that Ayula has a habit of murdering her boyfriend.
Just a small habit.
Yeah, just a minor flaw. And every time it happens, Khalid dutifully shows up with bleach, rubber gloves, and a strong stomach to clean the crime scene.
What's brilliant about Braithwaite's novel is how she completely normalizes the macabre. Khalid treats covering up a murder like picking up dry cleaning. It's just a family chore.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit. Kareed is just cleaning up the blood. She isn't the one actually swinging the knife.
Yeah.
And isn't familial loyalty essentially a biological imperative? Can we really say she is as morally culpable as the sister who is actually committing the murders?
This raises an important question about how we define morality in these stories. The thriller genre loves to exploit our virtues. Loyalty, protectiveness, familial duty. These are traits society rewards us for. But Braithwaite pushes that virtue past its breaking point. By cleaning the blood, Kareed effectively enables the next murder.
Right. She makes it possible.
Exactly. The tension in the book explodes when Ayula targets a doctor at the hospital who happens to be Kareed's longtime crush. Suddenly, Kareed's virtue of sibling loyalty is directly opposed to her own desires and basic human ethics. The author forces the reader to ask, at what point does being a good sister make you a monster?
It's the ultimate ethical trap. And Patricia Highsmith explored the same mechanism of complicity in her classic debut, Strangers on a Train. Two men meet on a railroad journey. Guy is a somewhat ordinary man complaining that he loathes his unfaithful wife and wants a divorce. Bruno is a charming but highly dangerous psychopath who mentions he wants his wealthy father dead.
And then comes the proposal.
Yeah, Bruno proposes the perfect murder swap. Bruno will kill Guy's wife and Guy will kill Bruno's father. Because they are complete strangers with no connection to the victims, neither of them can be connected to the crime.
Highsmith is an absolute master of the slippery slope. Guy is initially appalled. He completely rejects the idea. But he also doesn't go to the police. He just awkwardly entertains the conversation because of polite social norms.
Exactly. And because Guy doesn't firmly shut it down, Bruno goes ahead and murders Guy's wife anyway. Suddenly, Guy is inextricably linked to a psychopath who is demanding he fulfill his end of the bargain. So what does this all mean for you and me? Are we all just one bad conversation on a train? Or one protective sibling instinct away from becoming accessories to murder?
That is precisely the discomfort Highsmith wants you to feel. She takes a universal social norm, being polite, to a stranger talking your ear off on public transit and twists it into a binding contract for murder. The psychological thrill comes from recognizing how fragile our own moral high ground really is.
And that fragility is terrifying because it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It scales up. When you take that complicity and that blurred morality and apply it to an entire city or an entire culture, psychological thrillers become powerful mirrors reflecting real-world societal failures.
This is where the genre transcends mere entertainment. The setting itself ceases to be just a backdrop and becomes an active antagonist.
We see this vividly in Long Bright River by Liz Moore. It's set in a Philadelphia neighborhood that has been completely hollowed out by poverty and the opioid epidemic. We follow two estranged sisters. Mickey is a cop walking the beat, and Casey is living on the streets struggling with severe addiction. When a string of murders targets sex workers and Casey goes missing, Mickey goes on a desperate hunt to find her.
Moore doesn't just use the opioid crisis for gritty atmosphere. She uses it mechanically to build suspense. The reader is forced to constantly question the reliability of the addicted sister Casey while simultaneously distrusting the institutional, rigid gaze of the cop sister Mickey. The suspense is fueled by the systemic decay of the neighborhood itself.
We see an even broader scope of systemic tension in Steph Chaw's Your House Will Pay and Tony Cade Bombra's Those Bones Are Not My Child. Steph Chaw's novel tracks two families in Los Angeles, one black, one Korean, whose lives violently intersect following a police shooting of a black teenager, which echoes a similar real tragedy from the early 90s. And Bomber's book follows a separated couple searching for their missing son during the very real Atlanta child murders, facing a terrifying wall of indifference from the racist authorities in what they called the city too busy to hate.
What is striking about both of these novels is how they handle the immense weight of real history.
Right, and I want to make sure we pause here and state something very clearly for you, the listener. We are neutrally reporting the premises that are set up by these authors. We are not taking sides or endorsing the political viewpoints within these books.
Absolutely. Our goal is simply to examine how the authors use these heavy real-world issues to fuel the narrative tension.
Exactly. As readers, we are simply watching human beings collide over the very real, raw generational trauma of racial divides and broken justice systems. The suspense comes directly from the suffocating reality of that systemic failure. The social tension is literally the engine of the plot.
And we can actually take this lens globally with Natsu Kirino's novel Out. We are in Tokyo with a group of down-on-their-luck women working the grueling night shift at a bento box factory. When one of them snaps and strangles her abusive deadbeat husband, her coworkers rally to help her dismember and dispose of the body.
As you do.
Right, just normal coworker stuff.
Yeah.
But this amateur cleanup draws the attention of a local crime ring. And what it's really doing is highlighting Japan's ignored social underclass.
These thrillers are like a Trojan horse. You open the book for the page-turning suspense, the dead body, the missing person, the ticking clock. But once you're inside the narrative, you are confronted with immense real-world tragedies. You thought you were reading a simple whodunit, but you're actually reading a profound critique of a marginalized workforce or the devastating ripple effects of an opioid epidemic.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the authors are illustrating that a disintegrating mind, a character driven to murder or obsession or covering up a crime, is often just a symptom of a disintegrating society. Poverty, addiction, and systemic indifference are the true villains here. They act as the ultimate antagonists, trapping the characters long before the actual serial killer or crime boss even shows up.
Yeah, you're trapped by the system first.
Exactly. The thriller format forces the reader to confront these harsh realities because the suspense demands their absolute full attention.
Which leads us to a terrifying logical conclusion. If society at large is broken and the streets aren't safe, we are conditioned to look to institutions to protect and heal us. We trust hospitals, we revere universities, we rely on the authorities. But our final two thrillers take these very sanctuaries and turn them into isolated, inescapable puzzle boxes.
The institutional thriller. It's perhaps the most insidious trap of all.
Let's look at Dennis Lehane's Shutter Island. It's 1954. U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels travels to Shutter Island, a remote rock off the coast of Massachusetts that houses the Ashcliffe Hospital for the criminally insane. He's there to investigate an escaped patient. But a massive hurricane hits, trapping Teddy and his partner on the island. Suddenly, Teddy is thrust into a labyrinth of secret codes, locked psychiatric wards, and doctors who seem to be speaking in riddles.
Then you have Alex Michaelet's The Maidens. Mariana Andros, a psychotherapist in London, rushes to Cambridge University after her niece's friend is murdered. Mariana becomes completely obsessed with investigating Edward Fosca, a charismatic professor of Greek tragedy who commands a secret cult-like society of murdered female students known as the Maidens.
Both of these settings are completely isolated by design. You've got an island cut off by a hurricane and the elite closed-off academic bubble of Cambridge. It's the perfect petri dish for paranoia.
But the true aha moment for the reader in these institutional thrillers goes deeper than just geographical isolation. These stories prey entirely on the social contract. From birth, we are wired to obey people in lab coats, people with badges and esteemed professors. We assume they operate with our best interests in mind. What ties Shutter Island and the Maidens together is the systematic gaslighting of the protagonists by the very authoritative institutions they are supposed to trust.
Right. The reader is kept entirely off balance because the very people who hold the keys to the locked wards, the people holding the power, are the ones manipulating reality.
Exactly. The suspense comes from realizing that the compliance and obedience society demands from us is exactly what makes us the perfect victim. When the architect of your paranoia is the chief psychiatrist, who do you call for help?
Wow. That is a chilling thought. Well, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. For you, the listener, we have navigated the fragility of human memory and identity. We explored the terror of toxic homes where the sanctuary becomes the cage. We looked at the dark lure of complicity, showing how easily polite social norms can drag us across moral lines. We confronted the heavy, systemic failures of society acting as the ultimate antagonist. And finally, we walked through the gaslighting halls of elite institutions. We have distilled the essence of 15 distinct sources into one cohesive deep dive.
And I think it is vital to reflect on why we subject ourselves to this genre. We don't read these intense psychological thrillers just to be scared. We read them to safely experience the extreme limits of the human psyche. They allow us to build empathy for minds that are spinning out of control and to examine our own vulnerabilities, all from the safety of our armchairs.
It really is a safe way to play with absolute danger. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thread to pull on your own. We've spent this entire deep dive analyzing how these masterful authors can manipulate our emotions, twist our sense of reality, and gaslight us so easily just by carefully controlling the flow of information on a page. So how much of our everyday, real-world anxiety is being shaped by the narrators we blindly follow online and in the media? If a book can be the predator and the reader the prey, what trap is your mind already caught in today?